Now, China's aggressive maneuvering has been a cause of concern among its neighbors, whether it's South China Sea or the Indian Ocean. The latest to join the bandwagon is India. New Delhi is concerned about a docking of a Chinese research vessel called WION 6 at the Colombo port. India and Sri Lanka have carried out detailed discussions on the issue, with New Delhi raising concerns about China spying on its defense assets under the garb of carrying out research. A Sri Lankan official maintains that no official permission has been granted to the Chinese vessel due to India's concerns. But he added if the vessel complies with the standard procedure, no problem should arise with regards to docking. The Chinese vessel, which docked at the Sri Lankan port on September 29th, is going to stay in the Indian Ocean for an operation that will take 80 days. China says it would strengthen scientific research cooperation and exchanges with countries along the maritime Silk Road. During the COS operation of the Chinese vessel, a couple of Indian missile tests are lined up. But New Delhi's concerns seem to be rightly placed. China has been encircling India with its ports located on 3 sides now, often called the Triangle of Death. This includes Chittagong in Bangladesh, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and Gwadar in Pakistan. These ports give Chinese access to be near New Delhi's naval commands. Military analysts believe China has been building more and more research ships for spying. What is worrisome is that these survey vessels collect data on seabed mapping, which is recording hydrological data to understand the profile of the undersea environment. Now, this data serves both civilian and military purposes. But with China's civil and military convergence, it is very likely that it reaches scientific, military and commercial entities. So it can boost capabilities of Chinese Navy, help in gathering intelligence on foreign military facilities and vessels, and aid Chinese submarines in increasing their navigational activities in the Indian Ocean. A similar situation was witnessed when Yuan 5, China's spy ship, docked at the Hambantota port last year, despite New Delhi's concerns. The Chinese vessel was the latest generation dual-use ship meant for tracking satellites, rockets, and intercontinental ballistic missiles. In December 2019, another Chinese survey vessel, Xiangyang 6, reportedly deployed at least 12 underwater gliders, in the Indian Ocean. China's growing survey ship fleet is certainly not good news for India, which is watching these developments very carefully for security implications. To give us more insights on this story, Suresh K. Goel is a former Indian diplomat and is currently working on the India-China relationship in Indochina. He is joining us live from New Delhi. Suresh, welcome to the show. Indian naval officials assert that there is limited action they can take until Chinese vessels engage in overtly hostile actions. This is because the ship in question here is technically categorized as a surveyor ship and doesn't fall under the warship classification. But in essence, why is the WION 6 docking at the Hambantota port a great concern for India?
Look, the fact is that whether this is actually just a surveyor ship, it's a warship, etc., makes no difference whatsoever in terms of what the Chinese planning would be. China, my own assessment is that China having taken Hambantota on lease for 99 years in lieu of the credit that they extended to Sri Lanka, which they could not return. And therefore, the Hambantota port is completely under the control of the Chinese. And I really wonder if there is any international obligation on China not to use Hambantota for military activities. Therefore, number one, our concerns, which were articulated right in the beginning, when the Chinese were trying to develop the Hambantota port, have come true. It is a military activity, whether they call it military or not. It is an activity which is a direct threat to Indian security. If the ship is going to map hydrological data, if it's going to map the seabed, and therefore gauge how the passage can be controlled, it is a threat to us, number one. Number two, it clearly also demonstrates that China is not prepared to respect sovereignty and the security of others for the interest that it thinks are paramount for China. We saw that in Galwan. We saw that China did not abide by the treaties and the agreements that we had signed to maintain the status quo in the region. They did not. They simply came across because they thought it is in their interest to come across and damned the Indian concerns or the Indian security. It's therefore what we had said and what I think everybody knows, that China is the dragon in the China shop as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned.
Okay.
As far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, it is coming true.
All right. For the past 3 decades, both India and the United States have raised issue with the consistent rise in the Chinese naval activity within the Indian Ocean, like you mentioned there. If China does not stop with their activities on the ocean, what could be the diplomatic implications of that?
Huge, because any Chinese activities in the Indian Ocean could have the result of not just impeding the trade, which is enormous. Please do recall that 40% of the Indian trade passes through Malacca Straits, and therefore Chinese activities in the Indian Ocean of this kind would naturally impact on the trade. But beyond just the trade, the maritime security, the very threat to the naval lines of command, the very threat to the security of the littoral countries is a huge issue then. And if we talk about the BRI, if we talk about Chittagong port, then you have the Godar port in Pakistan, which China has built, calling it basically as part of CPEC, but clearly a military and navy port. I think the threat to the security of countries in the Indian Ocean increased tremendously. Okay. At the same time, you now have developments in Maldives, which is again very, very worrisome. So we need to really work on that. You asked the question about the USA. I think the USA is now more careful in assessment about Chinese threat. And that's a reason that you have Quad and you have OSAC and all those things, because USA does have to really look at China not just as an opposing power, but as an enemy, really.
Okay, Suresh, finally, and I want your brief response to this one. Some critics say that Sri Lanka could be veering towards China by allowing Chinese vessels to be docked in their harbors. Your thoughts?
I think in most of the cases, it is not really allowing China to dock the ships in the ports, but it is the way the system has turned out to be, the way Chinese have exploited the maritime system. And most of the countries are now becoming aware of the dangers of having allowed China to go this far. So let us see how this actually pans out in the future. But I know for certain that Bangladesh is very careful now. Bangladesh does realize the implications of China in the Chinese Navy in the Chittagong port if they do decide to come over there. I do know that Sri Lanka is concerned. So let us see what happens, but it is a real concern for most of the countries now.
All right, I've been talking to Suresh K. Goel. He is a former Indian diplomat and also currently working on the India and China relationship in Indo-China. Suresh, thank you very much for giving us time today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.